criticism is a big topic, and there are many commentators that speak about it and confront it directly. And specifically, you would expect a person like Rav Soloveitchik to have a lot to say about it. He was extremely analytical, extremely intellectual. He was definitely capable to stand up against the critics, and for the most part, he didn't. So it was questioned. And he does refer to it in The Lonely Man of Faith, and this is what he says, and this is what he suggests. Okay? Does anyone want to read from the second paragraph, biblical criticism?
Tanya, do you have a picture for me?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and for me, I just switched in last week.
Oh, okay. So I don't, but we're really going to finish this unit very quickly. So you could kind of like share, we're going to finish it this week, we're going to start a new unit next week. So, and if you want it, I'll print it out for you as well. The center. Okay, so anyone want to read this? Biblical criticism from the middle of the second paragraph. Sure thing.
That suggests that biblical criticism
Mm-hmm.
does not pose as great a challenge as one initially would assume. The critics make their case for multiple authorship based on certain anomalies in the biblical text. Rav Soloveitchik points out in response that the sages and the Rishonim were also sensitive to these textual anomalies, but they offered different explanations for these phenomena because they were working with different assumptions than the critics. In other words, taking note of textual phenomena is one thing, but interpreting the phenomena is something else entirely.
Amazing, exactly. Do you want to basically reword what he's saying? What's he saying about the biblical criticism? Does anyone? Yeah?
It just depends on, like everyone like makes their own assumptions basically, and like it's really kind of dependent on the person, how you look at things.
And I think he brings a big, like he comes and he says that basically these critics have different interpretations for textual anomalies, but so does he. And he speaks about this concept that there are many theories. When we see, he gives an example of, in Bereshit, we have chapter Aleph, Perek Aleph and Perek Bet that speak about the two different types of creation of man. And those who haven't studied this specific parsha probably didn't even realize that there's these two kind of stories of the formation of man. So a lot of biblical critics, they see this story and they say, there must have been a mess up, meaning there must have been two authors to the Torah, and they kind of mixed up and they messed this up, and they didn't notice it was a mistake. But obviously there are many commentators that speak about this on a metaphysical level, speak about this on a conceptual level. Rav Kook and Rav Soloveitchik have a beautiful kind of like interpretation of these two different stories. And Rav Soloveitchik specifically speaks about it. It really depends what the motive of the different kind of like understandings of these anomalies are. So it's more important where you're coming from when you're trying to interpret text versus what the interpretation is. But at the end of the day, if we bring it into statistics, we don't know for a fact. When we give, I truly believe this, that when commentators give their perception or give their interpretation, I believe that there's hashgacha there. I believe it. I believe that Chachamim, Chazal had hashgacha when they gave us interpretation, and when the way we follow halacha, okay? And that's the system. We put our faith both in Torah, both in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and our rabbinical system. We have to, okay? So that concept being said, they're coming up with a theory. Rav Soloveitchik speaks about it and says, when the critics are coming up with a theory, a logical theory, that's one theory, and he comes up with another. You want to believe this one, you want to believe that one? I'm putting my faith in Hashem, and therefore I'm trying to figure it out based on the fact that I believe in Hashem, based on the fact that I believe in the truth of the Torah, and the chronological logic of it, and that's where my interpretation is coming in from. It's all based on all the values and all the lessons and all the expertise that the interpreter is coming with. So when a critic gives it, he's coming with none of that. He's coming with history, he's coming with logic, but he's not coming with that background. And therefore, Rav Soloveitchik himself didn't feel that it was such a big and huge topic, because he didn't feel the relevance of it. And that's what they're saying. Okay? Just at the bottom, there's two approaches. Two approaches are possible when confronting critics. Does anyone want to read this one? The bottom one. Okay? Sure.
Furthermore, Rav Shalom calmly points out that two approaches are possible when confronting critics. A, one can respond to them point by point, but then one is playing in their arena and is constantly on the defensive. B, one can offer a compelling alternative understanding. This is precisely what the Rav does in the lowly man of faith. Instead of undertaking a detailed critique of the critics' interpretation of the first two chapters of brochure, he undercuts their arguments entirely by presenting a cogent alternative. Thus, he does actually confront the critics in an indirect yet constructive manner rather than a direct but defensive manner.
He's not doing it one by one for each argument. He's doing it as a general argument against having a theory. Which, by the way, in general, often I get this question, and it troubles a lot of the students. How could it be that we have different interpretations for the same passage? How could it be that halakhically speaking, we have so many different approaches for the same concept? And it kind of belittles the concept. Wait, it has to be a right and wrong. And through the teachings of the Rav, we understand, many commentators speak of this, we understand the richness of Judaism, the richness of understanding and interpreting the text. The way I see it, or the way I like to kind of like explain it, is that, people think, oh, well, is there truth? Is there ultimate truth? So I do believe that there is ultimate truth. I believe that there's ultimate truth, and I believe that there are many, many, many pathways of truth in order to get to that ultimate truth. The ultimate truth is here, and there are hundreds and thousands of paths to get to that truth. And it doesn't mean that if one person believes in his path to be true, a different path isn't true. And that's true hashkafically in terms of the way I choose to lead my life, but it's also true in terms of perception, in terms of understanding a specific concept. And that's why, even in terms of, in Emunah speaking, this is our unit, there's so many different approaches and understanding of this concept. Okay? So just before we discuss the videos that we watched last class, I just wanted, we're not going to go through it. The last page is actually an article that was written about a study, an archaeological study, that they found new discoverings of remains of Egyptian army from the biblical Exodus in the Red Sea. This is not so long ago. This is from February of 2017. Guys, this is when you were in high school, okay? 2017, nothing years ago, okay? And what did they find? They find literal remains, as you can see. It's not so beautiful, but it's like, skeletons. They find remains from what?
Sorry.
Sure thing. Every minute counts. Thank you so much. So there's real remains from that historical event.
Where were the remains?
From the area of the Red Sea. Okay? And the archaeologists that did the study are not Jewish, and we're not looking for evidence of the splitting of the Red Sea at all. They were doing their own, research, and they happened to stumble upon these, army craft, remains. And they found wheels from, horse and carriage. They found swords, and they basically timed it back to this era. In terms of years, there's a bit of confusion, but we've always had, in terms of Jewish and secular kind of historical years, we've always had a bit of a problem with the timeline. But in any case, he posed real questions of evidence, and it was very, very clear that these people died from some form of tsunami, okay? And they died in this way, but it was also very clear that that they were part of an army because of all, the weapons and everything. And they were not just any army. They weren't just like a sea, like they didn't have any ships. It was footsmen, meaning they were on foot, but then they died of a tsunami. And historically speaking, it's a sea today, right? It's the Red Sea. So it definitely points in the direction of Kriyat Yamsuf. Now this is 2017. And we have a lot of these cases where history or science kind of suddenly match a certain mitzvah or a certain historical idea that we've always known biblically because we speak about it. We speak about, the Exodus, and we speak about all these things, the 10 plagues, and we speak about all these things that have happened according to the Bible. But historically speaking, we don't necessarily have evidence. Or for instance, we have a mitzvah of Brit Milah, or we have another mitzvah, and then suddenly science comes up and says, oh, well, actually this process is also healthy, and it also has health benefits to it. It's always wonderful when kind of science or history or biology kind of catches up with Judaism. And for some people this doesn't matter because the splitting of the Red Sea they never had a doubt about the splitting of the Red Sea. They never had a doubt that it was real, that it happened. But there are other people that struggle with this, that have a real struggle to just have that simple belief. It's simple for those who have it, but that belief that these things not only represent some form of value that we need to learn, but they actually historically happen. Now, I, Baruch Hashem, was gifted with believing the stories in the Torah. I've never questioned the stories in the Torah. But when something like this comes along, it's just validating. It's almost exciting for me to read about it. So it's just like, yes, yes, yes. Now they know what we've always known, kind of thing. So, again, this unit, and now we're speaking about the videos that we watched, the few videos, right? So did you write down notes last class, right? So we had 3 videos. We had from David Aaron, right? Remember Ray? Does anyone want to speak about Ray and his thoughts of it? Yes, Rosa.
I didn't like it.
Okay.
There was a particular part I didn't like. It was when, actually it was the whole thing. But when the guy comes in and he's like, I'm depressed because I no longer feel happy. And then the psychologist is just like, oh, but look at the bright side. And he's like, oh, I'm all better. And I was just like, this isn't realistic and it's not helpful. It's very cheesy is what I thought.
Okay. I agree that it's somewhat simplistic, but I do think that the point being trying to be brought across wasn't specifically about a psychology session. It was more about the concept of kind of God, and he gave it tons of Ray and being the extension of the sun. But I do think that it's for the younger community. Yes, anyone? Yes, ma'am.
I liked the quote. I think this is from that one. That feeling great starts with being grateful. I thought that was a nice quote. I didn't see exactly how it fit in with the grander thing, but I thought that was nice. And also I liked the idea that of the metaphor of the ray, that we're shining, Hashem was shining through us. Again, I agree with Rosen that is a little reductionist, but I liked that. I think the metaphor was good, that we can shine through Hashem's light.
Yeah, I think that was the essence, the point of it. I also think that, Rosen, you might not feel this, but I do experience this with my students. I have students coming into my office, and they say, I see people feeling connected to Hashem, and I don't feel connected, and that's what I wanted this year, and it hasn't happened. and it brings them to great sadness. It's not depression, it's not, but it brings them great frustration, and they're just not able to connect to it. So this video is not going to help them, but that concept of someone being so deeply saddened by that lack of connection is real for a lot of people.
I really like the quote, "Fake it till you awake it." I've never heard that before, and I feel like everyone's always saying fake it till you make it, but if anything, it's something like you fake it until you awake whatever you want to get done inside of you, and I really like
And the greatest thing about that is that we all know that it's not enough to wake up. You have to actually get out of bed,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes we wake up in the morning, we have the alarm, we wake up, we get we are awoken, but it's not enough. We have to make that decision. Okay, now I need to get up, I need to get dressed, I need to do. It's not enough. So fake it till you awaken it means I'm doing something, I'm not there yet, but I'm faking it, I'm doing it, and then suddenly it gets woken up within me, and when it gets woken up within me, that's when the real work actually starts. Because when you think, oh, I'll fake it till I make it, you just keep wishing that you were already there. Wherever your friends are, you wish that you were there. And you don't understand that it's you that need to get yourself there. But the faking part of it will or might awaken it. I also like that. Yes.
So I also like that basically quote, and then I like your connection can't be broken, but it can be denied. I thought that had to do with it also, because fake it till you awake quote has to do with something that's already within you, and this connection quote also has to do with that. It's saying you know the truth about God within yourself, but you just need to reawaken your connection to God. So I did like that, but
read the quote again, the one you like.
Your connection can't be broken, but it can be denied. So
You mean by you?
yeah,
You can deny.
yes, it's always within you.
Have you ever felt that?
Yeah. So I think that's a really interesting way of putting it, but I do have a bit of a problem with it, because sometimes you just don't how can you just always know that it's within you? Is it within everybody? I just don't see that. I feel like some people just don't even have that. They have to reach it. What does it mean? It's within yourself.
So I think for David Aaron's approach, and again, you need to read his books to understand the full approach. The video is just like a taste, and if you feel intrigued by it, then maybe you would be interested to read his book. But he's very big on punning words. He actually believes in the similarity between words and their pun, and it's funny and amusing, and to some it's engaging. But I do think that what he's trying to say, that if we use the analogy of a ray of sunlight, and the sun being God, and we're rays of that sun, are the rays, what are the rays? Are they the sun?
No, they're part of the sun.
They're part of the sun, exactly, but they're not the sun, right? And they're literally manifestations of the sun in the world, right? So when we say, I don't feel God, essentially what David Aaron is saying, if I understand him correctly, is that you don't feel yourself. Because it's not about feeling God, you are part of God. So yes, it is in you. But this is lofty, and this is, philosophical. It's one thing to even conceptually understand that. It's another to feel that, to really acknowledge that. Do I feel like an extension of Hashem? I mean, even without this analogy, we know the concept of us being chelek eloka mimah, being a part of God. There's a part of godliness within us, right? So what does that mean, that part of godliness? What does that mean in reality? You know what I mean? So it's a challenge. I think most of us yearn to feel that in our lives. Have you ever felt, either in someone else or yourself, like that godliness?
Yeah.
Lyra?
I can't think of a time where I felt it, but I think just from the fact that, if
just look at the world and like, I've always thought about this from like when I was younger, I was like we call animals like animals, but like technically we are animals too, but like we're not. And like how is that possible? Like what is that other factor that we have that makes us not animals? And it's the godly aspect, like it's the dot, because like that's always when I wonder, I'm like, how did we like be so different? Like it doesn't make sense, like whatever. So then I realized it's because we have that like maybe I'll go a little bit deeper into it. Like I remember like the first time I thought about this because I was watching this show with my dad about like cooking, and he said like the reason like why humans can cook is because like out of all of the animals, we were the first ones to make like fire, and we're the only animals that know how to make fire. And like if you think of everything that humans have made that like animals haven't, it all comes like technically from fire. Like all of our building materials, how we like created like a society, it all comes from knowing how to like mend things and knowing how to like that, and like that is we like create things like, and we like, and out of that like when we create things and weren't spending all of our day like chewing food, because like when we use fire, like we didn't have to like chew on it to just cook it, and then like that gave us like time to kind of like question like why we're here in this like universe, and that is like exactly like what we're supposed to be doing. So I guess that is when I realized like there is something more than just like living.
Absolutely. I mean, people speak about it. A lot of people believe that the thing that differentiates between us is free will and free choice. But it's not enough, because there are animals that are extremely intelligent. Sharks are extremely intelligent. Monkeys are intelligent. There are animals that are more intelligent than other animals, and they do choose. They choose to go into this door versus that door. But the difference is that we choose morally. They choose in terms of like what kind of like either protects them or comforts them or gives them food in terms of their animalistic needs. But it's not moral question. They don't choose between two moral,
Because they don't have, like all they have is like,
they don't have that capacity.
yeah, they just need to survive, like that is their job.
Survival, exactly. And they're good at it. Yeah.
I feel like I kind of liked that it was very simple, because in a weird way, like, just seeing a topic that's so, like, complex in such a, like, simple way, but the parallel was so strong, I feel like it just gave me clarity on something that I could have, like, been studying or contemplating for years, and, like, for some reason just seeing it in, like, that little, like, short children's clip, like, just made things make more sense.
I think that's beautiful, and I think that that's definitely, the crowd that he's gearing at. He's gearing at, non-religious, non-affiliated people as well. And he's saying, I just want to give you a glimpse of like as if it's not full clarity, but like something about it is like, yeah, I could grasp that. That's easier for me to grasp than a full, book of Plato. Plato's writings. Okay. But yes, I do. I do appreciate that aspect as well. Any other thoughts?